Okay, so I am going to get started. In case anybody has forgotten, I'm Erin, and I put this together in a pretty short period of time, so it's going to be quite the all hands on deck informal workshop. What you're looking at right now is one example of a way to do a map in Tableau. This is a dashboard which consists of different sheets. The terminology is pretty consistent with other visualization tools. However, I will probably mess up some of the terminology at some point. Fair warning. So this is an example of something that I am not a huge fan of Tableau about, is that it looks one way on your personal machine, but then it looks a completely different way once you upload it to Tableau Public. Oftentimes, like, these things are, anyway, not critical. It's just that you don't have a lot of control over what it ultimately looks like. Things will change size, pixelation issues. Things will be really slow. So that's like an important point, is to really pare down the amount of data that you're using in your visualization, because I have done visualizations in Tableau Public and it is unbelievably slow. It's painful slow to have like the transitions between pages. So this is an example of an animation, a very simple animation heat map. So as you can see, the years are counting down. You can count down. You can also count up by hitting that. This button stops it. And this is an example of kind of giving you an overview. And then this little cursor gives you additional details for individual events. Ordinarily, this tooltip window would be a little bit prettier, but you can control a fair amount of the formatting, and we'll look at that when we create our notebooks. Continue. So you definitely notice, obviously, that this area is a problem spot. The volume of collisions definitely appears to be highest downtown. Of course, that's where the density of people is probably the highest, so not terribly surprising. I think the reason we don't see a fair amount of density on I-5 or I-90 or 520 is that I suspect that the Washington State Patrol maybe didn't provide that information to the Seattle Department of Transportation. This data comes from the Seattle Department of Transportation, which means like and those are the agencies that are providing this data. Arguably the troopers could, but I'm not sure that they did, just judging by the map. So I have to stop sharing this. Oh, well, this is an example of a dual access map. I left it with two different maps right now, but you can combine them if you so choose by selecting dual access. And then all the same things are available if you wanted to dial down again. That would be a lot prettier. I did this kind of the last minute. Ordinarily, there is a button at the top that brings it back. For some reason, there's not. So I put in this additional filter in order to make it easy to return back. If we just want to look at collisions with the most vehicles, we do that. And we can zoom in. Interesting. Usually a keep comes up, but maybe I disabled that. I'll just use the old-fashioned zoom. And allows you to still retain the information from the hour map, even though I'm selecting the data based on the total injuries. Okay, so that was like a super quick example. And now we're gonna start more or less from the beginning, literally from the beginning. I created, oh, that's right. I made this easy on myself by sharing a screen and then forgot that I did that. Okay, so this is a completely blank Tableau notebook. If you want to follow along, I suggest you open up one yourself. Has everybody been able to do that? Have there been any issues downloading Tableau Public? You know, it's pretty rude. Whenever I change something, Cisco, WebEx, all of the chat and participants and everything goes away. It's just rude. Okay. So connect to data. You can choose to, if you want to use connect to a CSV file, it falls under the text file. If you want to use a shape file, you would select under spatial file. The data that was provided as part of this workshop is an example of each. The streets data is a shape file, and obviously the collision data is a CSV file. So in this data page, there is a grid that will show you examples of the data to make sure it's all loaded correctly. And it's very important and essential to change some of the data types. For instance, I think that these are incorrectly labeled, maybe. I had trouble plotting them, but traditionally, I believe latitude is X and longitude is Y, I think, but I might have that reversed. If so, we'll find out soon. But it's important that you change the data type to the location, the geographic role, because if you left it as a decimal, you wouldn't be able to plot it on the map. So there's a variety of other things that you can do. You can change basically strings versus numbers. You can change, oh, so this is another example. The severity code, I believe, includes 3B or 2B or something. So it's interesting that they elected to consider it a whole number. I'm going to change it to a string. Every time you do that, for some reason, linked to a string requires you to reload the data. I'm not sure why. If you want to combine multiple data, you can do so here by adding another one, and then you have to do a join. I had hoped to be able to easily join the spatial file that I provided. Unfortunately, that does not work. However, I do have another spatial file just to give you all an example. The census tracts. This is just something I downloaded off the standard website, but this is an example of how to join a shape file to a CSV file. So you select geometry. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the CSV file right now. The census tracts, you select geometry. So this is the spatial file. And this, I'm gonna have to create a join calculation. In a perfect world, you might have a point geometry in your CSV file. We do not. So what we do though, is we can make a point. And we do that, again, I think, I'm going to say it's YX, even though it should be XY. So now I have made basically a new variable, if you will, a new field in order to join with the spatial file. And then you need to select intersects. So you make your point out of the longitude and latitude, and it intersects the geometry. Now this whole snazzy thing only works if you are joining two polygons. So the shapefile that I provided with the roads data, they're lines, they're not polygons. So I was not able to join them, at least not in Tableau Public. I suspect Tableau Desktop, which you have to pay for, I'm sure that has to provide that. So you can do an inner join. I mean, these are just standard joins. I'm going to do a left join because the important thing is the collision data. And update now. If all goes according to plan, then you will see data populated down here. If not, then you get to try again until data magically appears. And depending on how good your internet connection is, this may take a while or happen very quickly. It was happening quickly earlier. Oh, you know what? Before, when I did this, I always had the census tracks on this side. Okay, whew. For a second I scared myself. Okay, so we can see that we have the collision data and we also have the census tract information. So now we're going to go to a worksheet in all due time. There's one other thing you can do. If you click this button right here, it's the metadata. And so you get a list of all of the columns, which can be handy sometimes because if you have a lot of columns, I mean, I consider this to be quite a few columns. I have to scroll back and forth to figure out which ones I want to get rid of. You can hide columns. Oh God, this is never a good sign. We'll give it a few seconds and then I'll just go back to my prepared one.
Erin,
yes.
Erin, there's a question in the chat window. Where did you get the census dot shape file?
It's just out of the Seattle Public
View Toolbar.
site. I could provide the link, but this is taking forever and I'm afraid to change anything, so I'm not going to. So latitude, longitude, I just double click and then I let Tableau figure out which one should be which. And then for the detail for X and Y, you have to make it a dimension or not. Interesting. Yeah, I really think these things are messed up. But that is a side point.
I think you just have XY swapped because your picture is 90 degrees rotated from mine.
Okay, I will relabel it and see if it works itself out. Yeah. All right, magic. So now easily, immediately, you get the individual points plotted, and this information in the tooltip is provided for you automatically. Whenever you put a field in this area, it automatically gets added to the tooltip. So there's some things that they don't necessarily want you to do, especially if you're going to filter. You wouldn't want to filter on a field that has this many values, but I just want to provide that information in the tooltip. So I'm going to say add all members. And now we can see the location. I'm not sure how useful the X and Y information in the tooltip, especially since it might be reversed. So I would probably remove that. But as soon as you try to format the tooltip, you stop getting the automatic population of information from Tableau. So I try to wait until I'm pretty sure that this is the map that I want before I do that. Calculated variables are very important. So if you want to group your information, if you want to relabel things, let's see, one example of group, let's do a grouping example first. Junction type. So we're going to create a group. So these things are both involving intersections. So why don't we just make them an intersection? I'm not saying this is the way to go. I'm just giving you an example. Not sure how useful the information that it's a junction is, but what the heck. In this example, we will do that. So now we have 4 groups. We can also relabel this field if we want. I'm just going to leave it. So it automatically adds the field, and then we can recolor the information if we so desired, if this was critical information that we wanted to know the junction type group. You can also provide information like the weather. You can create filters on the year. There's a bunch of different ways that you can set it. You can, I'm just going to stick with the range of values. And so if I drag it, we should see some change. One important thing is to reduce the opacity. I'm not sure exactly how that's pronounced. So it looks a little better. You can also reduce the size of the point. Especially dealing with this much data, I'm not sure how useful this is. However, if you set up your filters in a way that you can sort through this information, so you can reduce the number of dots to a manageable amount, then I think this is a useful plot. We're better off using bar charts or to express information in a more meaningful way so we can actually get value. Obviously, this depends on what kind of question we want to answer. I mean, for instance, if we want to know do most accidents happen in a under particular lighting conditions or weather conditions. We can create filters for that. You can create a variety of filters. The choices are quite extraordinary in some respects. You can condition it on another field if you wanted to, like say, I don't know, I'm asking for trouble if I do that. I have to like select off the top of my head. This is a very safe one. By top 10. Let's see, what should we count by? This is another thing that I struggled with. I'm not sure what is really valuable. I'm just gonna say none and go with general. Okay, so we show this filter. If we're only interested in the rain days, then that reduced the data by a fair amount. Almost a useful plot at this point. We can create another filter. Let's do by month. You can change the type, so it can be a drop down with multiple values. That way it saves space. This column gets used up pretty quickly. So if we're only interested in January, then this is a lot more useful at this point. Looking for trends. So it looks like a lot of intersection issues. Not so many junction issues. However, I guess there's quite a few junction issues in this area. I might change the colors just because red and orange are pretty similar. Maybe I will make junction purple. Well, anyway, you get the idea. Okay, Seattle Streets is a good file and it's awesome. You need GIS software in order to combine the information, or you need Tableau Desktop, because like I said, I'm sure Tableau Desktop has the ability to combine points and lines. However, there's, I'm sure, also other ways that you can do it. There are places online, like for a few bucks, they'll generate a combined file for you. I can't recommend any off the top of my head. I have not. I am wary of giving my credit card information out to any old random house, so I have not done that, but it's certainly an option. I had a list of things that I was going to talk about, but I'm afraid that my computer will freeze if I move to them. So we've applied filters. We've got a bunch of different filters. We created a group. We can create aliases. So if you don't like the words, you can change them. So if you don't want the word collision in all of these, you can just delete it. There's a lot of functionality. And now variety descriptions, detail. Okay, so I will format the tooltip at this point. So if we edit it, we can change this stuff. This is the default way that Tableau sets up its tooltips. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. I do kind of like the information being a little bit darker and the explanation of what that information is a little bit lighter, but I go back and forth. So some things, for instance, like location, I don't think you really need it down there. In fact, I think maybe it would be more useful to be the first piece of information. And you can preview it. So that's what it looks like now that these field variables are not always conducive to regular speech. Junction type. I don't know. Do most people know what that means? I don't know. Anyway, we'll stick with it because I got it. You can also add additional information though. So now if I add, let's see. Oh, did I already add road conditions? No. Okay. So now I've added it and you can see it there, but you will notice that it did not automatically get added to the tooltip because I have already edited it. However, all is not lost because we can insert it. In order to figure out which color this is, I find this to be frustrating because it's not automatically indicated. So what I end up doing is I end up copying I'm sure there's a better way to do that, but that is the hack that I typically do. And we can see that the road conditions are now reflected. I guess another useful piece of information would be the date. And as soon as you add a date time field, you get all of these choices. You get to choose the year, you could choose the quarter, you could choose the month. You could do the month and year, kind of useful. So we will insert the month. So now you have that information as well. Okay, so map layers. So you can put your own background images in if you want. There are just, and there's also servers, services like Open Streets. I'm just going to use the generic given backgrounds, and they include this. The normal one is the one, I think that's probably most common. Dark, I don't love, but you also see it a lot. In the right situation, I guess if I change the color of these dots, it might be better. But in this scenario, I think streets is kind of appropriate. I don't know why the water is so bright in streets, but it's not a problem because you can wash it out. I'm gonna add the streets and highways. So now we get those labels. You can add additional census information, but it really makes the background very busy very quickly. US population, median age. So it changes the coloring and it also imposes, it's interesting. Usually what I've often seen is that it will label the information. Oh, by state. There we go. That would explain it. It's interesting. The labels are not automatically there. Well, it's not too terrible. So you can, if you wanted, you can have the census tracts included without using a spatial file. The thing is, this is static. You can't select based on the census tract. You can't filter. It's just literally a static background image. But sometimes that's all you need, depending on what your application is. And of course, you can change this. So the younger, I don't know, if you're younger, I hesitate to use temperature diverging in that scenario. So blue-green sequential is probably fine. I think it's distracting because of the volume of individual dots we have. So I don't think that I would include a data layer, but in the right application, it's very, very useful. So that was maps, layers, and map options. So I always include a map scale because it really irritates me when people don't. The map search, I don't think is terribly useful. And if a control is not really useful to what you're trying to do, I find it's easier to remove it. The view toolbar, as you can see, is that thing. And there are some useful stuff in here. So this allows you to pan. This allows you to select with the rectangular, same with the circle. This allows you to fix the map. So let's say you like it one way, but then you want to move in and get additional information, but you want to be able to snap back. That allows you to do that. The map search, I'm not sure exactly what you would be searching for, so I don't think it's terribly useful. Interesting. I selected it and the menu went away. Okay, so I'm going to remove the map search. Okay, so I promised for filters, plotting, formatting the tooltip. Okay. One thing that we didn't do yet is a calculated field. Okay, let's do a calculated field based on the number of vehicles. So if you want to create a new variable, basically, variable, column, field, those words are interchangeable. We will do this. So let's say we want to bin, basically, there is a bin option, but it's very limited. So if you want to set your own bins and so that they're not equal size, I think that a calculated variable is the easiest way to go. Vehicle bins. So there is a format you have to follow, and you do get help with it, as you can see. If actually no, I'm just going to say if the vehicle count is greater than 2, then I'm going to label it more, let's see, 3 plus cars. If or else if vehicle count is equal to 2, then 2 cars. And else will be the ever popular, oh, I forgot the else has to be all in one line. else? So no cars, which sounds weird. So I'm going to call it bicycle. Even though I'm not 100% sure that no cars necessarily means bicycle. And the very last thing that you must do is end. So now we have a valid calculation. There's a bunch of different ways. You can do for loops. I think it's been a while. The if, then, else if, else statement is very, very popular, and you can do a lot of things with it. But there's a lot of different functionality. There's a lot of built-in functions. Like you saw, there's some as I started typing. Some will automatically populate. There is no, and something I should have said at the very beginning, Tableau has a lot of material available online. More often than not, it's very useful. Sometimes in the forums, you can find something that's very specific, but all things being equal, I think their documentation is a lot better than most. And they also provide several videos that you can follow along, which is also really cool, and watch them physically do it. So if now we want to instead color by vehicle bins, we can so do. And again, because I already edited the tooltip, it does not automatically show up like it would otherwise. Interesting. It did. I don't think I've seen that behavior before. Oh, I guess because it was colored by junction type before, it just swapped in the new color. I don't think number of vehicles. Whatever. Filter again. If you click on this, it should highlight them all like it did. Excellent. And you can exclude them if you want, if you just want to focus on the others. You can format this. You can edit, as it says, edit the title. Vehicle bins doesn't sound great. So we'll say you can change, you can shade them. So that's something that I sometimes find is helpful. It depends on what your application is, as it always will. It should always depend. Sometimes if you have visualization and you have some plots, it's nice to have all of the filters have a distinct background to kind of pull it together. It's up to you. Okay, so have people been following along? Would you like to share your screen if you have an amazing plot to show, map? If not, we can do a plot. All right, seeing nothing in the chat window and assuming people can still hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Would you be able to show us how to say color by the number of accidents that have occurred at a location?
So that requires, so let's see. Yes, that is doable. What you probably need to create, because I don't think I have a field. Okay, well, there's a field for number of records, measure values. Number of records is what I want. Create group. All right, cancel that. I'm just going to create, let's see, if something that has a unique value, isn't there, there is a report number, yes. Okay, so we are going to create, let's see, transform. Oh, create calculated field, and I'm just going to do a count. Let's see, I think I want, do I want count distinct? Let's see, that would count, yes, the number of unique values. I'll call this count. Okay, so in a new field, what does count look like? Separate by year. If I create, no, I can't see. I'm sorry, I could not hear that. It was muffled. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make it easy on myself, and I can't see that very well because the sharing your screen thing is in the way. That's annoying. There is a way to change the, except it's right smack in the way. Is there a way to move that? No, doesn't look like it. Oh, there it is. Okay. So you can change the marks. Why isn't that here? Hmm. Okay. Yes, there is a way, and I'm going to figure it out, and I will post it. I created an account before, and I think I used a parameter.
Aaron posted something in the chat window.
Well, sure, we could give that a shot. Let's see. So I'm sure I didn't say this initially. Measures are typically numbers, but not always. Tableau takes a stab at trying to parse them, and you might need to move them back and forth. So we could, I guess, group by location. The thing is, there's a jillion and one. Yeah. I don't know. I'm blanking. But like I said, I'll post it. There is a way to, you'll see the maps sometimes there'll be like a number here, like 15 will be in this area, 20 will be in this area. And I have certainly done that before, but because I don't have something here that you could easily change, but I can't change it now. Hmm. Well, if somebody else has done that, please feel free to share your screen. I think anybody can share your screen, I think. Yes, that must be the case because I'm not the host and I can share my screen. I've totally forgotten what I was going to do next. Well, what kind of plot, bar plot, line plot do you think would be useful? You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go back to this. So this is grouped by severity level and also by the number of vehicles involved. So you can see how different the different types of, I mean, the number of cars involved. The bicycle collisions are obviously not as common and they've remained pretty steady. I don't know what this is. I find it hard to believe that there were no bicycle collisions during any of these years that resulted in no injury. Oh, well, I guess if there's no injury and you fall off your bike, you don't report it to the police, right? However, if there's no injury and you collide with another vehicle, you do report it to the police. So I guess that makes sense. Not too many 3-car collisions, 3+ result in no injuries. But we can combine that in a dashboard. So here's a new dashboard, and all of the various sheets that are available can be combined. So let's do the density map. And let's do the vehicle count. And let's add some text to the top. And you can readjust and play with all of these things and reformat them up the wazoo. Literally, the amount of time that you can spend is impressive. You can also hide these titles if you don't want them. You can hide that. I think you might have to go back to the field. Hide field label for rows. You can adjust the size of this. You can decide, I don't really like it like that. I'm gonna move it. Command Z will undo anything that you do. There we go. I was like, I'm not sure why that's not happening. Let's see. We will make that font smaller. Unfortunately, once you split it, I've found in my experience that you might need to change the fonts for each one, which is not awesome. So let's 7. Oh, awesome. Worked out. You can change the size of the axes labels too. You can prevent the tooltip from showing up if you don't want it. You can also use this as a filter. So this plot. So if I'm only interested in 2011, you see it automatically went to 2011. If I'm only interested in 2008, it moved to 2008. I was just slow to respond. I'm like, usually if you press it again, it releases everything. Obviously, these axes desperately need to be changed. If you so choose, you can make all these axes uniform. You can change the tick marks. You can do all that stuff. You can change the size of this. Oh, you can see this pops up. This, I don't know why it calls it page name. That is a mystery. That was happening earlier. Anyway, this corresponds to the value that is in here. Oftentimes you can insert those things so it happens dynamically and provides additional information. For some reason, I don't think that I can put it up here. Yeah. That is something I don't fully understand. But the magic of undo. You can put, let's see, I'm gonna undo the dual access and move it back to its original. So you can add annotations to your maps if you want by annotating. So right clicking and you can annotate as it says pointer area. These are area annotations, but to annotate a point, particular point, this is essential. This is an essential point. That's kind of cool, depending on what your application is. And you can just drag it around. You can change the size, the font. Okay. I am not sure. I mean, I was not able to answer the last question. However, I am open to potentially not answering other questions as well. So is there anything that anybody wants to do in particular? It's called brushing and linking, when you link plots so that they're interactive along with your other visualizations. It's very important so people can get an overview and then drill down for individual information. This is not the best visualization because it's kind of hard to read this. They don't change when the map changes. But I wanted to provide an example, and it seems like the total pedestrians. Another thing is not great practice when the labels are such that you need to cran your neck in order to read them. It's much better to change the font of this so it's horizontal if you can. However, the word pedestrians is pretty long, so it would take up a lot of space if I changed it to horizontal. The way that I got this, well, let's just create another dashboard. And by dashboard, I definitely did not mean sheet. Just say map. Ah, it's not going to let me choose. All right. The way that I got this is by using the pages filter. And that ostensibly allows you to create actions. There's some other fancier stuff that it allows you to do too. But if we, is there something else that changes dynamically? No, these are all years through time. Okay, I'm going to create okay, parked car, and I'm going to do a count. So count field is literally a column that just has a 1 in every row. It's a very not high-tech way of handling it. You can also theoretically get the same result by using number of records. Interesting. So I used number of records previously for total number of tracked collisions. I didn't expect it to remember that. I expected it to create the number of records for the hit parked car, but let's do this. So the order in which the fields are placed in the shelf is important. It changes the visualization. So right now we're seeing the number of records and it splits out by the hit parked car. So didn't hit a parked car, hit a parked car. But if we swap them, theoretically, oh, we can't because that's a sum. Let's see. We will create, let's see, how about this? Now you get an example. So the first split is by address type, but we can move it, and then we can have this first split be by the hit parked car. The orientation similarly matters in the columns shelf. You automatically get a tooltip for all plots, not just maps, as you can see. And if any information, any field is included, it gets added automatically to the tooltip. Are there any cute tools? Oh yeah, pie charts. So there are lots of tempting but bad ideas. Anything that requires a lot of joins. So I earlier was playing and I joined 2 CSV files and a spatial file, and the number of calculations required in order to create the full data set was such that it took a long time. If I was to use that going forward, you can create, ostensibly, they will create a fixed data set, but the bigger your data set is, the more calculations are required, the slower everything goes. I'm blanking on the word that they use, but they create like a snapshot of your data if it gets too big. And my computer has frozen. This is not typical for such a small, relatively small data set. I don't know why my computer is running so slowly. Oh, it's not my computer, it's the internet. Because Tableau Public doesn't allow you to save really anything locally, you have to constantly be talking to their server, which I find extraordinarily irritating. One way that you can kind of sort of get around that is you upload your notebook. You can save it to Tableau Public. We will save it. I don't know, it's probably a mistake. It'll probably take for an end of time. Basically, you save it, you upload it, and then you can download it. And you can save it on your hard drive when you download it. And so that's kind of a workaround way to be able to put your Tableau notebook on your hard drive. So you can work with it on your hard drive and not constantly be interacting with the Tableau server, which is sometimes fine, but naturally, because I am doing a workshop and I needed it to be okay, it is slow, very, very slow. I'm gonna cancel. I don't really need these new things saved anyway. Other things that are tempting, but a bad idea, not just having a large data set. I think this is probably arbitrary and it probably depends a little bit on who you're talking to. But general practice is that don't use color, don't use a lot of color, only use color very sparingly for where you really want to call attention, because color really grabs the user's attention. And if you make everything have a lot of color, it's garish, but also it loses the impact, right? So as much as I would like to not have these be gray, I made them gray on purpose because I was trying to not distract. I mean, the more important thing is the map, right? You can get cutesy with a lot of different things. Like you often see people change the size of the dot based on some factor. Like we could change the size of the dot based on the number of vehicles or the number of injuries. But it's very difficult to tell which dot is smaller than another dot unless you only have like 2 different sizes, in which case, what's the point? So some people like that. I wouldn't say I'm totally against it. I'm sure there are applications, but using relational size as an indicator of information seems like a good idea, but I would say more often than not, it's not. Same with changing the shape. So you can change the shapes from circles. I mean, I just left it as the default, but you can make them squares. There are several different options. I think there's like half a dozen different options. And if you use them to indicate different pieces of information, especially with the volume of data that we have, it's impossible to tell the difference, really. I would say it's a bad idea. Definitely pie charts. Pie charts have occasional value, but more often than not, they're not great. You typically don't want to use, I mean, if you're doing continuous data, more often than not, you want to use a line chart to indicate that it's continuous. And if you have discrete values like counts, counts being the most popular, you can potentially use line plots, but it indicates that there's a value in between. So for instance, if you only had collisions with 2 vehicles, actually like in our data set, we have collisions with I think up to 10 vehicles, and then there's a collision with 128. And so if we used a plot that indicated that there were collisions with the number of vehicles in between 10 and 128, that's a lie. So it's better to use like a bar chart in that scenario where it clearly delineates the discrete categories. I think the other stuff that comes to mind is just arbitrary, so I'm not going to mention them. Yes, having a lot of information in one visualization. So I'm kind of torn. I wanted to illustrate the map, and I think having a map with geolocation data is very useful. It can be very useful, especially when you separate it out by year and you can see the heat map. I don't know why this is still canceling. Just to spite me, I think, because I said mean things about Tableau Public. Information. So going into individual collisions from a lot of information is not practical unless you're filtering it down. Filtering it by year is still not enough. You might be better off doing a variety of different plots. So there's oftentimes you'll see like, actually it's very popular with the COVID stuff. They have a little plot for each state. And so you can kind of just see the general trend line for each state. In that scenario, when you have a lot of information and you want to communicate the trends within a large number of different discrete categories like states. Yes, definitely. So hierarchies are, I actually was going to create a hierarchy with this, but we only have really 2 values. So hierarchies are things like if you have a county, or so let's say country, state, city. So basically when you create, I can't create it right now. Oh, how about if I go to a different one? Okay. So we don't have that much geolocation data. In fact, we actually only have the latitude and the longitude, so it doesn't work very well. But let's just pretend. Let's pretend that, let's see, where's the location one? Right there where it's highlighted. So you can create, oh, it won't even let me do it. Oh, there it is, hierarchy. Say it wouldn't because it's not geolocation data. So you can call it something like mapping items or something fancier. And it automatically creates, you know, I don't think that this is going to, few. I don't know, I was having trouble earlier. So let's say location was like a city, and then this was the specific longitude and latitude. When you create the plot on the map, what you'll see are the different demarcations. You'll see the bigger demarcations and then the smaller demarcations without having to try to do it individually, basically. I'm not sure if I have an example. There is an example that's really nicely done in Tableau, and I will try to find the link for you that goes through hierarchy. It's like introduction to plotting or map. I think it might be this. Yes. They create a hierarchy in step 4, create a geographic hierarchy, and they show you with the animated screenshot. So it's really nice and you can follow along really easily. So basically what they do is they create country, state, city, postal code. And then when they put the map, the information on there, it automatically creates each of the delineations. So this is the geographic hierarchy. Creating the hierarchy, starting with the country. I don't necessarily think that's required. You can probably start at any level and just drag them around. And like I said, the state. Well, you get the idea. And then, so with the country, and you get the United States. But then when you click the little button to unnest, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but I'm gonna go with it. It automatically populates all of the sub geographic categories. That is what I was looking for. Was filled map an option earlier? I don't know. And so then you can color or filter on any of the levels without having to go with the dual map access, or I mean, it's a lot easier. Good. I'm glad I could sort of answer one question. Oh my gosh. Well, we're almost out of time, I think. So are there any last questions I could maybe answer? Maybe direct you to a good resource? So this allows you to basically do what you were asking earlier too. So actually this would answer the earlier question about how do you get the counts. In this case, you would have to create a geographic field. So you could group a whole bunch of census tracts together. You can create, let's see, does this give you the example? Like you can create your own regions. Oh, it does. Perfect. So this is creating custom territories. So basically just grouping subcategories into larger geographic categories. In this case, California, Oregon, and Washington were the West Coast, I guess. Not sure that Hawaii and Alaska would feel that way. So once you create that, you can also change the level. And so you can have the number associated with the larger category. So yes, this is a good reference.